This episode is particularly special to me because today we have retired Army officer Dr. Douglas Waldrep, who is a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, also known as my dad. As you probably know by now, my upbringing as a military kid sparked the idea of creating Partners of Commercial Fishermen in the first place. My ultimate goal is to learn ways to best support us through fishing seasons and beyond, and this begins with learning how to nurture our mental health. In this episode, we discuss the similarities between military and fishing families, the importance of family cohesion and community, and how to deal with trauma and challenges. We touch on the importance of communication and how commercial fishing couples can approach it during the season and in the off-season. We also talk about what it means to take mental health breaks, what that may look like, and its benefits. On a personal note, it was interesting to speak to my father as two professionals side by side and hear the wisdom he's shared with patients over the years. This was the first in-person interview I had, and I thought, what better way to do it than with my father? I really appreciated asking him more poignant questions on the pain points of our community and recent community questions that I've pulled in Instagram and our private communities as well. And I loved bringing those forward to him and then watching him kind of dig through the Rolodex of wisdom in his brain to specially curate advice just for us. I'm happy y'all will hear our dynamic play out, as these are conversations that we have behind the scenes as I continuously learn how to best support the POCF community. And on a side note, I get my compassion from others from both of my parents, yet I get my sentimentality from my dad, and maybe you'll hear it here. I hope you enjoy the first of a two-part series on how we can maintain a healthy relationship with our mental health. Thanks for being here, and I love you, Dad. Let's dive in. I'm Megan Waldrep, host of the Partners of Commercial Fishermen podcast, an extension of an online community for partners to connect and feel less alone. Our podcast invites fishermen, family, friends, and supporters of the industry to learn, laugh, vent, and hear stories about this incredibly unique way of life. What do you say? Let's dive in. All right, I've been trying to record this with my father this is our third attempt, so hopefully this is going to go down. And I want to welcome you again to speak with our awesome community today. Thanks, Dad.
Outstanding. I've been really looking forward to this, Megan. I think this is tremendous what you're doing with the POCF, and I'm hoping I can help you with that. This is great.
Oh, thanks. I know you can for sure. And you've helped me with my entire life. And you've also been one of the main inspirations for me starting this community, because there are so many similarities between military spouses and military families and commercial fishing families that I thought, who better to talk to about this than my father, who is a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, all board sort of certified. And maybe you could go into that more of your background, because that's the nutshell that I know. I know you do a lot of amazing things. I don't know all the acronyms behind your MD
sure.
name.
I can quickly do that. Yeah, I'm board certified in child and adolescent and adult psychiatry. And the way I got there is first I went to West Point undergrad and spent my time in first 5 years in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, Lawton, Oklahoma, the home of Megan, where Megan was born, by the way.
Woo woo.
And so but when I finished that time, I decided that I always want to follow into medicine. That was something I always wanted to do. You know, your grandfather, Poppy, was a oral surgeon, and he was also in the military, and so he was my role model. And went to medical school in Charleston, South Carolina, and then went back to Hawaii, where your sister was born.
That's right.
And that's where I studied adult, child, and adolescent psychiatry. After that, you recall, we went to Heidelberg, and that was
Germany.
a great experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went to Augusta, Georgia, where I saw Tiger Woods play golf. And that's probably the most important thing I've done all my life. And then we ended up at Walter Reed in Washington, D.C., and we got there 3 months before 9/11. So I responded to the 9/11 bombing at the Pentagon. And you're right. In all these situations, we have a group of people who get together, and they're committed to one goal, you know, as a unit. It's a hierarchical unit. chain of command. And I believe that's what the fishermen do too. They have a group on a boat, certain unit. They have to work together. They have to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Um, and things can happen. Trauma can happen. It's probably one of the more dangerous occupations out there. And so, what do you do when that happens, or if someone drops out or is not able to complete the job? So you can't just always go back and get another fisherman. Well, in the military, you can't just always go back and get another soldier, sailor, or whatever unit you're in. So a lot of similarities, and the similarities are also in first responders like firemen and EMT, emergency room physicians, and this is so important when you think about what these groups do to sustain this organization and structure and culture, because all of them have their own culture, and it's very important. And the fact that you put this together, I'm so proud, because this is what is needed. And like in the Army, the Army supports it and it's there. It's kind of always been there, but this is kind of from scratch. I mean, it was pretty much, I mean, people were probably doing it on their own, but it helps if it gets a little organized and you can spread the wealth around to other folks. And I think that's what I see you doing, and I really enjoy watching you do this. It's amazing.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And once I've gotten into this industry and learned, there are different organizations that have resources for fishermen, and it's great they're, from what I understand, they're more regional and they focus on certain areas. So like Alaska has a really strong support group with United Alaska Fishermen, I think that's United Alaska Fishermen. And then Maine has a very amazing support group. It's the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association. I think I have that right. And actually the person who is one of the people that's on that board is Monique Coombs, who I went to middle school with in Germany.
Oh my
Yeah, isn't
gosh.
that crazy?
Heidelberg.
Yeah. So we talk about just
That's amazing.
the similarities of this background often, and it's crazy how we were able to reconnect on Instagram, because she's married to a lobsterman now, which is
wow.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I'm trying to do is I always want the partners to feel empowered, and I want them to realize how important their role is in making this whole operation. When I say the whole operation, I'm not talking just about the fishing industry or the family. I'm talking about the whole fishing industry. Like the entire commercial fishing industry would not be what it is if it wasn't for the strong partners and their families at home that are part of this. I mean, you fall in love with a fisherman, you don't necessarily know what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
The same with the kids. The kids are born into fishing families and they realize, oh, this is our normal. But it's like, wow, your life is really unique and special in its own way. And I wanted to start off on that positive note because of the unique groups that you were talking about.
Yeah. So
let's talk about the strengths that each member of the family can gain from being a part of this industry. And maybe they're all similar, maybe they're different, but what is, for example, a soldier or a fisherman's perspective of the strengths that they would gain, and what are the strengths that a partner would gain, and what are the strengths that the child would gain from being within a unique industry like this?
Well, I want to step back a little bit and just to let you know that even in the military, bringing families together is kind of relatively new, and probably didn't get really into that much until after World War II, and we had these other prolonged wars and stuff. And what the military was finding out is that they could not function without taking care of the family. Before it used to be, well, we wanted you to have a wife. Well, back in the day, a partner would issue you one.
Yeah.
And but it doesn't work like that. People fall in love, they get married, and they pursue life together. So what are the strengths? I think the strengths, well, just imagine in any relationship, when you get together, when you first get together, it's like, wow, we can tackle anything until anything starts coming up, and it's like, wow, I've never done this before. And then when you're in a culture like this, that one of the partners are gone for a long period of time, and the other partner stays home and manages the household, there's suddenly a split. You're having two different uh, cultures developing elsewhere. The fisher person has their culture while they're fishing, uh, and they're motivated getting the pay and bringing home the bread and everything. And then the partner who stays home is managing things. There tends to be un, well, this is just how it happens. It's not good or bad. I'm not going to judge it, but the partners who do the fishing, they're so focused on bringing home the bread and doing the work, because they got to stay focused on that. It's almost like they have to rely on the partner at home to be strong. Just do it. And it would be better if if everything went perfect and the home was perfect, and they finish their 3, 6 months or however long they're out, and they come home and they can fit right back in there. But no, I mean, the partners who stay home are doing so many things. I mean, they are raising the family by themselves, basically.
Yeah.
Typically, many will try to incorporate the partner who's away as if they're there, but they're not there. So an emergency with one of the children or themselves is dealt with, and the partner at home doesn't have that little group that we talked about before, the hierarchical group. All these guys on a boat, they're going to help each other out, or people on a boat. Many times they're like by themselves, and in a community like this, I would imagine, unless they live at a community of just fishermen, their neighbors aren't going to know what's going on, and they won't know how to respond to that. And people can be kind of don't have confidence in themselves if they don't understand what you're going through, so they'll pull away, because there's just this fear thing there. So the people who stay home, I think, have even more of a tremendous responsibility and require tremendous strength. And and that's what we found out in the military. And so the military is able to organize these little family groups together. And you said like they had the similar things in Maine and Alaska. And I bet you they went through the same process the military did. They said, we just can't do this. I mean, it's hurting the business. We got to take care of the families. And so how do you take care of the families? Well, everybody's got to learn. You have to learn the profession of what goes on the sea, which everybody kind of, that's kind of almost like a romantic thing. So everybody's really interested in that. But then there's a need for everybody to learn, well, what's going on at home while we're at sea. And sometimes that may not be as romantic, when you're talking about dealing with finances and relationships and sick children, or natural disasters that may occur at home while they're gone. And as far as a unique strength, and in many ways it requires preparation, that people need to get together and talk these things through and say, hey, what happens if this happens? And nowadays it's easier than it used to be, but they can also keep in touch while they're separated. And that's probably the most important thing, is keeping in touch, so that when the reunion comes, it's not a complete shock as to, what do you mean? The kids were sick. Why didn't you tell me? Well, I didn't want you to worry about it. Well, no, you gotta share that stuff, because we want to be together when we come together. And so communication, like any relationship, it requires a great deal of communication.
Yeah.
And acceptance that things are going to change a bit. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, but we're all growing. I mean, even if you aren't separated, you're going to have changes in a relationship. But these changes are going to occur without the other one there. So you're going to see it when you get back home. And so it's more sudden. So you just have to keep communicating so you learn about each other, what to expect.
Yeah.
And keep open lines of communication. And that's why I really struck with what you've done with POCF organization. You have yeah, I know you have your advice group that you give advice to, and that's important because you are a POCF, so you have an understanding, and so that's good for the people at home. It's all probably good, even good. Do you ever hear from the fishermen? Do they write into those things? And
I hear from them occasionally, and actually, Chris ran into a fisherman who he follows him and his wife or follow the Partners of Commercial
oh yeah,
Fishermen, and
yeah.
he said, "Oh, you're Chris Dabney. I know you from your
Uh,
wife's group." And I thought that was really neat that it also not only did the group speak to the partner, but the fishermen too. And I've had fishermen that have recommended the group to their partners because of this. Because and I want to go back on the communication part because we definitely know that communication is huge in a relationship. However, within commercial fishing, it's very hard to communicate at times.
Yeah.
And some fishermen prefer not to communicate in the sense of their heads in the game and they don't want to worry about, am I going to be able to connect with you? And I say this there was a couple people in our group who had this issue, and it was mainly they met their fisherman later in life. He's maybe in his 50s, and
Oh,
this is how he's operated. Maybe he's been married before, maybe he hasn't, but when he fishes, that's what he does. He puts his head
don't
down.
bother me with.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
Take
like you
care of.
said, the communication thing is really important. And so what I've suggested and I've spoken with other partners about is, whenever you have those precious moments of speaking to your partner or texting with them, because they may or may not have service and their phone call may or may not drop after 30 seconds or 2 minutes,
Right.
and a lot of the times at first you're venting and then the phone call drops and then you feel terrible because you're unloading this. So it's, we have conversation prompts of how to talk to your partner in a way that's effective, but also that you feel that you're being supported, because it's, at one point it's, I'm feeling this type of way, but they also feel helpless that they can't be there for you.
Right.
So what I've recommended and heard people recommend, and I would love to get your professional psychiatrist opinion on this, is, you speak to your partner just basically to have a touch base. How are you doing? Like, where's your mental space, each other, but then write down what is really, what are you really struggling with this season? And so when they return after they've had a couple days to reintegrate and you have some time to speak with them one-on-one without the kids, and you're just, maybe you're on a date or maybe you're actually sitting down at home, you can bring out, all right, these are the challenges that I've had. I really struggled with this part of either the relationship, the household responsibilities, the job, whatever it was. What can we do next season to help in this area? Like, what can we do, you and I, to make this easier for me? Or what can I do to help you? Because, the communication is it can be such like a lightning strike.
Well, I think that's incredibly important. I mean, if you're going to communicate, you need to somehow keep a record of it. And each time you have a separation and you write this stuff down, you're creating like a chapter in a book. It's almost like a how-to manual. So I can only if the first time you go out, you have all this stuff happen. It's like, whoa, man. And then you write it down. And then the next time you go out, you go, wait a minute, something like that happened last. Oh yeah, I called this person. And so the stress it helps alleviate some of the stress, but also you can see a history of your own development. So that's incredible that you do that. And it doesn't require like a how-to manual. It's just that it does help to be able to reflect back, because there is so much learning going on, and you can learn from each other. Now, what you described is actually very common, where the partner who goes away says, just keep it straight. I can't deal with it. And if something comes up, it's like, oh, what are you doing? You're making me think about things I don't want to think about. Oh, that has to be discussed even before you leave. I mean, there may be people couples who that's how it works best. And I'm not giving you the gold standard on anything. The gold standard is what the relationship the two people decide works best for them. It may be the person at home would prefer not talking about that stuff, dealing with it on their own, and then tell them how they worked on it. But I think it would need to be something that's agreed upon before they leave. And that would be something worth writing in your book.
Mhm.
We're gonna agree not to talk about this until we get back together.
Hmm.
And that way you know what each other expects.
Mhm.
And then and if it didn't work, then you go, wow, man, next time we're gonna have to do this different. But be yeah, be prepared, like talk about what it's like to go, you know, and what you expect. Then you might have the person, the one who says, I don't want to hear anything, and the other one says, I have to talk to you at least once a week. I mean, I can't do this on my own. You got to figure out a way to make that work. Like, okay, well, let's talk once a week, and the first 15 minutes will be on whatever it is that you want to talk about, and then we go and get that fit in. And that way you're respecting each other's needs.
Yeah.
And trying to do the best you can. It's not perfect. I mean, we're people, and but it's helpful.
Yeah.
It's very helpful.
Well, as a side story to that, technology does make it easier to communicate for some. Some people do have Starlink, which has been a game changer. I mean, not everybody has this, so we're still all over the place. Chris had the advantage of using Starlink when he was up in Bristol Bay for a few weeks this summer. And it was kind of funny because it, in a way, it's kind of funny to admit, it almost took away the romanticism of him being gone, because he was just able to call me whenever he wants and like, hey, what are you doing for lunch? And like, now I know what he's doing all the time. And before I was, worried about his safety. I was doing the whole loop in my head and then having to harness my independence and go on with my second life that I have as a solo, partner. And that in its own, that longing, there is romance there, even though it is hard as hell, but then that I didn't realize the beauty in that until it was gone, until I was able to speak with him. And I'm not saying I'm not thankful that I get to connect with him like that, but it was a game changer, and it not necessarily like, wasn't like, oh, everything's great. It was kind of like, oh man, I remember when we couldn't talk all the time, and then how special and fleeting it was when we could. And, so I throw that out there for anybody who doesn't have the Starlink or any kind of ability to talk to them as often as you can. Like, there is beauty in that, in all of these challenges that we have, no matter what it is. And like, I love that you mentioned, writing down the challenges and keeping that as like a mile markers of how far you've gone, and to journal, really mark down your life and what you've overcome. I think that's so important. I think that a lot of partners don't realize how much they do take on and how far they've come, because they just keep doing it. And to have that moment to really pause and look back and be like, damn, I'm really freaking amazingly strong person, and I can do this. And look how much we've done together, and, how much we've been able to grow separately as individuals, but then come together as a whole, and that is gold within itself. So on that note, I want to skip around to a mental health break.
Okay.
I'm taking advantage of the psychiatrist right now.
Okay.
So recently, a POCF in our community said that her fisherman took a mental health break for 2 months, and said it was much needed. He felt so much better. Now he's back on the boat. So mental health break. That sounds great. However, when people think, oh yeah, I would love a mental health break, like, what exactly does a mental health break look like? And what are the benefits of a mental health break?
What does it look like? Well, it's different for everybody who takes one. It's why are they taking it? When should they take it? And there's a lot of things involved in a mental health break. And what are the expectations? I don't know what your friend did, but it could be as short as I just going to have a weekend at home and just stay home. I'm not going to go out. Or it could be I need a month. Each of those have different qualifications. it's going to be, if you're not working for a month and you're taking a mental health break, is it interrupting your work cycle? And is that going to be okay? Is it going to, how is that going to interfere financially or not? And then what do you expect to do during a mental health break? Are you going to go into rehab and get well from any kind of addiction you might have, or is it to get to see your kids and take a trip? What does this mean? So it can mean different things to different people. I think you had asked me, or maybe I read somewhere, it's like, okay, when does someone know they need it? Well, it's kind of like it's treatment. You're treating yourself. So it's kind of like knowing you need to take an aspirin. How bad is that headache? Well, how bad are things going? Are you not able to complete your work? Are you super irritable and you're not taking care of your family? Maybe you're not paying attention to the important things like paying bills and stuff, and you're noticing that. Um, One of the hardest things to keep track of is negative feedback you might be getting from your partner. It's hard to hear that, and it's hard to accept that. But at some point, you need to be able to trust that feedback, positive or negative, just to keep track of how are things going in your life, and to help point out, gee, do I need to step back a bit and take care of these other issues because I keep hearing about them. I don't know if I answered it for you, but everybody has a different reason to take a mental health break. Is it important? Yeah, I think it's very important. And even as a psychiatrist, I know it's tough to say, wow, I really could stay home today from work, but I don't usually do that. It's like, first of all, what do I need a mental health break for?
Well,
But
I think a lot. If you're a psychiatrist,
Yeah,
for sure.
right,
You got a lot of
right.
people talking about their
But
challenges.
and so there's a stigma to taking a mental health break as there is to getting help in mental health. So it can mean a lot of different things to different people. When that decision is made, it should be a shared decision. Because if one of the people are going to take a mental health break, the other one may have to do extra to help them. Or if it's taking a trip, are you both ready to go somewhere? So it's still another thing where where you work with your partner. And even if you're like, I'm just going to go fishing with the guys for a week and camping, and well, you better explain that. And how's that going to be? Because then you're going back into, well, you're taking a mental health break, you're going away for a week. That's no different for me because you'd be gone anyway. So then you get into fairness, and it can cause its own type of problem. So even that has to be somewhat planned.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's to be able to recognize that you need one is a strength, and to follow through with that as a family is a strength too. Yeah.
That's it for today, y'all. Tune in next week where my dad and I continue to talk about how to navigate relationship challenges and different mental health resources and people that we can reach out to, and the difference between all the different types of therapists and doctors out there that can help guide us in the right direction. As always, thanks so much for being here, and I'll see y'all next week. Thank you so much for listening. To support our community, I'd so appreciate it if you'd tap the subscribe button to this podcast or write a review. And if you're a POCF who wants to connect further, go to POCFpride.com for weekly blogs and to learn about opportunities to join our private communities. We'd love to have you.